stay tuned for that. Beautiful, unique resource. Mayo Clinic doesn't have it, CDC doesn't have it, NIH doesn't have it, nobody has it. And again, this is something that you have helped produce. In 1999, the CFIDS Association was instrumental in the Social Security Administration disability ruling. We have, over the past 20 years, funded about $5 million in research to the foremost researchers. Nancy Klimas, Paul Cheney, Lenny Jason.
It works now. I mean, just on this particular thing. I'm sorry.
Anyway, we've provided funding to some of the foremost investigators. We conducted a Medscape partnership. Medscape is an online continuing medical education program in 2008, partnering with Chuck Lab and Cindy Bateman. And we educated 32,000 providers and who took the course for continuing medical education credit. And about 200,000 use the course now as reference. So huge success. Medscape was dumbfounded how quickly and how many people actually took the course, and showing the real need and demand for information about ME CFS. And we have funded new investigators to the tune of 11-to-1 return, is that how you say it? $600,000 in funding in 2008, and as of last year, that $600,000 has been turned into, I think it's $11 million in follow-on funding from the NIH, the Department of Defense. So some really good return on investment, and again, it's not only funding ME CFS research, we're funding new investigators who are doing cutting-edge things, going out there and identifying the types of individuals that we need for our community to do the kind of research that's going to move us forward to safe and effective treatments. This is a picture, a schematic of the gut microbiome, or the bugs in the gut. How many people know about the microbiome? We were the first ones to fund this study, and I'll show you. I think I'll show you a hints of some of the data that's in the process of being published. So, all that is good, but we needed to be better. And we did that by building something that no one else has built, and we call it the Research Institute Without Walls. And what our Research Institute Without Walls is exactly that. We conduct research without the bricks and mortar, without the overhead associated with that. We identify the best investigators that we can to do the kind of research that needs to be done to get us towards safe and effective treatments. That's our infrastructure. That's our translational, that's our bridge piece between those really cool discoveries in the lab and getting them into the clinical research realm, getting us to treatments. So, the first piece of our Research Institute Without Walls, actually the critical piece, is the biobank. How many of you guys have heard about the Solve CFS biobank? And if you're not enrolled in it, I have a bunch of consent forms and some information if you're interested in enrolling in it.
We actually kind of wanted to hear a little more about the biobank.
Okay.
A little bit about it.
Okay, here you go. Let's see if I can get this going, because this is a good piece. It's not going to work. That's just too bad. Okay, so the biobank is it's a infrastructure that is nimble, on-demand sampling. The first piece of it is a registry component, and we are working with Vanderbilt University using an electronic data capture platform called REDCap. REDCap is used by about 700 institutions worldwide, including all of the CTSAs, the Clinical Translational Science Award programs in the US. Those are a number of academic setting places throughout the U.S. So REDCap is designed for clinical research. So it's safe, it's private, secure, it has all the human investigation requirements assigned to it. When someone is interested in participating and signs up, you are sent an email. Well, actually, you would sign the consent first. And then you are sent an email and you get a nice little URL that allows you to click on it, and you go underneath here. There's this very, very simple form that you fill out online and you complete information. And then that essentially logs you into the registry, provides the basic information about you and whether or not, or how you will eventually qualify for a study. Then when there's investigators who need patients, who need samples, they then call us up, usually email, and they say, we need this kind of patient with this kind of sample. We go to the database, we look to see what we have, and we contact you. We get more information if we need it, specific types of instruments and assessments, or or a sample. So for example, just today, I got a request from an investigator on the autonomic nervous system, who studies the autonomic nervous system on patients throughout the country. Last week, I got a call from Harvard, and an investigator who is world-renowned, has never done CFS research, and is interested in looking at CFS samples for virus discovery. And this kind of thing is now happening on a regular basis because of the biobank. It's an incredibly attractive resource for discovery that you make possible. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, because it is amazing that there is such an intrigue about ME CFS because there is so much to be learned and discovered. And that's what scientists do. They like to discover.
So do we, I'm still trying to picture this, is the biobank then a bunch of different places or that you would donate, like tissue samples or blood samples? Is it one place, or could it be all over the country?
We come to you. So the way that we have done it so far is we send kits. Again, so let's say the virus guy at Harvard needs a specific type of sample. And so I find out what kind of sample it is, I get the right collection method set up, and then we put a kit together, and then that gets sent to you. And if you need to have a phlebotomist or something done, then you either go to a lab or you go to your doc, and then it gets processed in the way that it needs to be processed, put back into an envelope or some kind of shipping container, and then to the biobank or directly to the investigator.
Do we
So it's
pay for
as
that?
needed, there's not a bank there, it's as needed, you request.
On demand,
samples
it's totally on
based
demand.
on the form that you filled out listing your particular symptoms and stuff, is that right?
So the sampling, the biological sampling is on demand.
Right.
And the types of information that is required by an investigator also varies. So for example, in an epigenetic study that we're doing, the investigator knows that certain types of medications affect the epigenetic profile. So we had to exclude all of those types of people that were taking immunomodulatory medicines, for example. They couldn't be in it. So it depends on what the study is and the kind of information that we have to collect. Medication history, family history.
So if I understand right, we're gonna go online and sort of register, we're willing to possibly be used in some future date when you need somebody like us. Here we are. And then at that future time, somebody asks you for X kinds of people, you check your registry and then contact to see if they're still available, and then send kits to spit or blood or something at that time.
Yep.
Is that right?
Exactly. That's exactly
So how
correct.
big is your bank right now, the registry?
So we have 550 people consented and registered, Of that 550, about 350 were from the, when we first started the biobank, when we did a GSK study, GlaxoSmithKline, and we collected blood from 350 people. So we have an inventory of 350. And that inventory has actually been used for a bunch of studies, in addition to the original study. And there's 250 people pending consent. That means they've gotten their consent documents, but they haven't returned them yet. So right now we're at 800 and we're aiming for 1,000 by the end of the year. But heck, I'll take 10,000.
So do you handle other diseases in this bank?
Right now it's ME CFS, and that's ME CFS diagnosed by a physician, or ME CFS, I think I have ME CFS, and most importantly, and this is very important, are healthy controls. We are one of the only biobanks that actually has a healthy controlled population. So it's your friends, it's your family members, it's neighbors, which turns out to be super duper important when you're thinking about looking for infectious agents, for example. Do your family members have the same thing? Do your neighbors have the same thing?
I have a couple of questions. Who pays for the testing? Do we pay the lab fees?
So for the blood collection,
Yeah.
most of the time you do. It's a nominal fee of $20 to $40. I know LabCorp charges, I think, $25.
Because I belong to an HMO that is probably not going to want to handle that kind of stuff for an outside party.
Yeah, so, and we also have contracts with LabCorp and Quest, and they'll, send a phlebotomist, and in that case, we end up, depending, you have to have a certain number of people. Like, there's enough of us here today that I could have said to LabCorp, we have 50 people in the room today. Will you come and draw blood from all of us? And so we can do that, and then it's a really good deal.
So
And we're planning at the IACFS
Get you a
meeting.
phone?
We'd have to all sign consents first.
And once we sign up, could they come to us more than one time for samples?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So you mark that on your consent form. Are you
Okay.
interested in being recontacted for additional studies?
Okay, and how do you take a tissue sample? What does that involve?
We haven't had any study requests yet for tissue samples, but there's muscle biopsies, there's cerebrospinal fluids. It's a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot more expensive, and it's a lot more complicated.
What about the fact that many of us have tissue samples taken at UC Davis on file?
That's their property.
Okay.
Not ours.
Yeah. So
I just
when you give that sample, you're signing that you give that sample to them.
Can we opt out of that part?
Yes, you certainly
Okay.
can. It's your sample.
Okay.
A lot of us have at least pertinent recent years of lab work, paperwork. We would love to send you copies of our blood and other analysis. Would that be helpful? Besides this,
So that's an excellent point. And now I'm going to jump way ahead to a project that I hope is going to happen. We have recently partnered with Patients Like Me. How many of you are familiar with Patients Like Me?
Yeah.
On a grant with, from hopefully we get it, through PCORI, the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. PCORI was funded as a result of the Affordable Health Care Act. PCORI is a non-federal agency that funds research for patient-centered outcomes research. So Patients Like Me and the CFIDS Association have partnered to form a national network of ME CFS patients, with the ultimate goal of in 2 years becoming part of a national network of patients. So the cool thing about this is, number one, it would totally mainstream ME CFS in a huge way, if we get it. And even if we don't get it, Patients Like Me has a huge ME CFS community and is interested in helping us figure it out. So the partnership, I think is really an interesting. So Susie, to your point, part of this network is doing exactly what you just said. Getting the information that you have in your records, whether it be electronic format or transferring your paper forms to electronic form and then getting that into the network database, is a big part of this national effort. It's a huge part, because one of the biggest things lacking from most of the registries now is longitudinal data. It's really, what is the natural history of each patient's story? What is your story, right? What is your natural history? And this is what hopefully will happen, will transpire.
No, testing, most of us are on limited income. So how are, most of our insurances are not going to pay to do sampling for us. So how are you guys, when they could, or they can't afford it, to be a participant, yet you're getting funding that should go towards possibly doing the collection of samples?
Right. So it is a nominal charge for the collection of the sample. And right now, we have tried to compensate people or work out a deal so that the collection is done for free. So, most of the time I can pick up the phone or, work out some type of deal. And hopefully in the,
Most of us are not.
We're jumping around, so I thought,
we are jumping
yeah,
around.
so I just thought,
But you're right. And
If you want to participate, but you can't afford to, so you're in the same boat.
right.
I got Kaiser, she was
So do I.
mentioning something
Yeah.
about, and my doctor just wrote blood draw for a private study. I didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
I had
Oh,
to-
really?
No.
So there are, and
Doctors behind you, I had Dr. Lee at Kaiser,
Is
Yeah,
he
he
still
just
practicing?
do a blood draw for this person.
on
Dr.
that,
Lee's not around anymore, right?
Pardon?
Dr. Lee's not around
No,
anymore,
he's
right?
not there anymore.
Yeah.
Whether my
Yeah,
doctor,
anybody's doing it.
personal physician now would, I don't know, because I haven't had
Yeah.
been
I'd have
tested.
to check with my.
If
I'll
we
check
get a
with my-
photocopy of our labs, we have our paperwork, we get our photocopies, that's ours. We can mail that anywhere. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
but she's right. If it's for research, if it's known that it's for research or a biobank, then oftentimes the phlebotomy fee is waived. But sometimes it's not.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah,
Becomes very expensive out of the.
Yeah, it's hugely expensive. Same with cerebral spinal fluid. We have not done a muscle biopsy or cerebral spinal fluid study yet, and so I would have no idea how much that would cost. But if we were doing something like that, obviously we'd have to work in to the budget of the study the cost of that, so that the patient would not have to
Right.
incur that cost. Absolutely correct.
And doctors need to be educated.
It's
to know
weird.
what
A lot of
prescription
people
for.
do it. I made a statement when there was a study that was published last year or something like that. 2 years ago, Steve Schutzer published it, and it was a cerebral spinal fluid study. And I said, people aren't going to want to go around getting poked in the spine.
No.
Well, I got quoted in that by the New York Times. That was my quote. And boy, did I get a raft of stuff from the clinical and the scientific world. Of course patients will want to do that. I would.
I was under the impression that Dan Peterson had a pretty extensive collection of samples that go back a number of years. Is that true, and do you use that? Or would that be part of this biobank?
He has his own biobank,
Okay,
and it does have a pretty extensive cerebral spinal fluids set in there, as well as serum and blood. But there are a couple of biobanks going around.
I see.
So Dan uses that for his research.
I see.
It's not to fund other investigators.
yeah, let me jump in here and kind of connect her last slide, that little tube slide where the translation and all that. And basically we acknowledge that the system is broken. I mean, you've got this huge amount of money and it's not very good outcomes. The system is broken because of silos. I'll go ahead and jump to my little slide there at the very, very end. So see, we're